My name is Fella Best, and I'll be reading an excerpt from Ralph Ellison's A Party Down at the Square. I don't know what started it. A bunch of men came by my Uncle Ed's place and said there was going to be a party down at the square. And my uncle hollered for me to come on. And I ran with them through the dark and rain, and there we were at the square. When we got there, everybody was mad and quiet and standing around looking at the nigger. Some of the men had guns, and one man kept goosing the nigger in his pants with the barrel of a shotgun, saying he ought to pull the trigger, but he never did. It was right in front of the courthouse, and the old clock in the tower was striking 12. The rain was falling cold and freezing as it fell. Everybody was cold, and the nigger kept wrapping his arms around himself trying to stop the shifters. Then one of the boys pushed through the circle and snatched off the nigger's shirt, and there he stood with his black skin all shivering in the light from the fire and looking at us with a scared look on his face and putting his hands in his pants pocket. Folks started yelling, "Hurry up and kill the nigger!" Somebody yelled, "Take your hands out of your pants, nigger! We gonna have plenty of heat in a minute." But the nigger didn't hear him and kept his hands where they were. I tell you, the rain was cold. I had to stick my hands in my pockets, they got so cold. The fire was pretty small, and they put some logs around the platform they had the nigger on, and then threw on some gasoline, and you could see the flames light up the whole square. It was late, and the street lights had been off for a long time. It was so bright that the bronze statue of the general standing there in the square was like something alive. The shadows playing on his moldy green face made him seem to be smiling down at the nigger. They threw on more gas, and it made the square bright like it gets when the lights are turned on or when the sun is setting red. All the wagons and cars were standing around the curves. Not like Saturday, though. The niggers weren't there. Not a single nigger was there except this Baycoat nigger, and they dragged him there tied to the back of Jed Wilson's truck. On Saturday, there's as many niggers as white folks. Everybody was yelling crazy because they were about to set fire to the nigger, and I got to the rear of the circle and looked around the square to try to count the cars. The shadows of the folks was flickering on the trees in the middle of the square. I saw some birds at the noise and woke up flying through the trees. I guess maybe they thought it was morning. The ice had started the cobblestones in the street to shine where the rain was falling and freezing. I counted 40 cars before I lost count. I knew folks must have been there from Phoenix City by all the cars mixed in with the wagons. God, it was a hell of a night. It was some night, all right. When the noise died down, I heard the nigger's voice from where I stood in the back, so I pushed my way up front. The nigger was bleeding from his nose and ears, and I could see him all red where the dark blood was running down his black skin. He kept lifting first one foot and then the other like a chicken on a hot stove. I looked down to the platform they had him on, and they had pushed a ring of fire up close to his feet. It must have been hot to him with the flames almost touching his big black toes. Somebody yelled for the nigger to say his prayers. But the nigger wasn't saying anything now. He just kind of moaned with his eyes shut and kept moving up and down on his feet. First one foot, then the other. I watched the flames burning the logs up closer to the nigger's feet. They were burning good now, and the rain had stopped and the wind was rising, making the flames flare higher. I looked, and there must have been 35 women in the crowd, and I could hear their voices clear and shrill mixed in with those of the men. Then it happened. I heard the noise about the same time everyone else did. It was like the roar of a cyclone blowing up from the Gulf. Everyone was looking up into the air to see what it was. Some of the faces looked surprised and scared, all but the nigger. He didn't even hear the noise. He didn't even look up. Then the roar came closer, right about our heads, and the wind was blowing higher and higher, and the sound seemed to be going in circles. saw her. Through the clouds and fog, I could see a red and green light on her wings. I could see them for a second. Then she rose up into the low clouds. I looked out for the beacon over the tops of the buildings in the direction of the airfield that's 40 miles away, and it wasn't circling round. You usually could see it sweeping around the sky at night, but it wasn't there. Then, there she was again, like a big bird lost in the fog. I looked for the red and green lights, and they weren't there anymore. She was flying even closer to the tops of the buildings than before. The wind was blowing harder, and leaves started flying about, making funny shadows on the ground, and tree limbs were cracking and falling. It was a storm, all right. The pilot must have thought he was over the landing field. Maybe he thought the fire in the square was put there for him to land by. Gosh, but it scared the folks. I was scared too. They started yelling, "He's going to land! He's going to land! And he's going to fall!" A few started for their cars and wagons. I could hear the wagons creaking, and chains jangling, and cars spitting and missing as they started the engines up. Off to my right, a horse started pitching and striking his hooves against the car. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to run, and I wanted to stay and see what was going to happen. The plane was close as hell. The pilot must have been trying to see where he was at, and her motors was drowning out all the sounds. I could even feel the vibration, and my hair felt like it was standing up under my hat. I happened to look over at the statue of the general standing with one leg before the other and leaning back on a sword, and I was fixing to run over and climb between his legs and sit there and watch when the roar stopped some. And I looked up, and she was gliding just over the top of the trees in the middle of the square. Her motor stopped altogether, and I could hear the sound of branches cracking and snapping off below her landing gear. I could see her plane now, all silver and shining in the light of the fire with TWA in black letters under her wings. She was sailing smoothly out of the square when she hit the high power lines that followed the Birmingham highway through the town. It made a loud crash. It sounded like the wind blowing the door of a tin barn shut. She only hit with her landing gear. I could see the sparks flying, and the wires knocked loose from the poles were spitting blue sparks and whipping around like a bunch of snakes and leaving circles of blue sparks in the darkness. Thank you. My name is Fella Best, and that was a partial reading of Ralph Ellison's A Party Down at the Square.